My name is Baljeet and I'm representing Rulesmatics. And today I'm going to talk about how to manage decisions for workflows. So a quick introduction about Rulesmatics for those who were not in the last call. Rulesmatics was founded in 2007 with a focus on decision and business process management consulting. And we provide consulting on multiple decision platforms like Sparking Logic Smarts, FICO Blaze Advisor, JBoss Rules, IBM ODM, and we are going to add open rules also to our consulting services pretty soon. We have implemented solutions for various industries across various industries like healthcare, insurance, financial, government, and manufacturing. Rulesmatics Labs is a sister company that we started to focus on utilities and frameworks based on several years, actually 15 plus years of experience working on business rules and business processes. We have learned a lot and we wanted to capture that learning in the form of some utilities and frameworks that we use frequently to increase our productivity. And some of the frameworks that we developed are Excel-based decision services testing framework, which we talked about in my last presentation. We have developed a business process management framework to manage workflows. You will probably get a little bit a preview of that framework in today's demo later on. We also experimented with the rules management framework. It's a kind of a prototype that we developed with the thinking that business rules management and execution may not be part of the same product. We'll talk about it in our future presentations. All of our frameworks are based on keep it simple and small thinking that all our frameworks are very small in memory footprint, easy to use, no special hardware software is needed, and very small like tools and utilities. So today we're going to talk about decisions, services, and workflows. So those who are not familiar with workflows, I wanted to give a quick overview of workflows. Workflows are part of many enterprise applications, and they are used to orchestrate and manage long and short running business processes. Workflows usually contain one start and one end step as shown in the diagram on the right hand side. There are automated and manual steps and decision steps as well. We'll talk about these steps in detail in the next slide. A workflow usually has a document for which that series of tasks are completed. For example, an insurance quote or a claims request or a medical bill or a loan application. So we create a work object which flows through this workflow for, let's say, a loan application which has to go through different steps. The automated steps of a workflow invoke any service to perform a task, for example, sending out an email or updating loan application in the database. Those kind of tasks that are automated are performed by automated steps. The manual steps are the steps where the work object typically waits in a queue and it requires some manual work. So user must pull the work from the work item using a business application and perform appropriate tasks. For example, example of a manual task could be calling back a customer, and that's for that a person has to pick up phone, dial a number, and call to the person, and then update the discussion that he had with the person in the work object, and then it submits the work item, and the item moves in the next steps in the workflow. Jacob, I see a hand raised. You want to talk about it? Is there any question there?
Yeah, I just wonder what tool do you use for these graphics?
Oh, the graphics on the right hand side?
Yes.
That's actually our workflow framework, which I'm going to show you. This is our tool.
Thanks.
So
By the way, I'm sorry, in real situation, speaker should not be pay attention to raise hand. Only Sandy will control this.
I thought about that, and then I thought maybe I'm not audible to everyone, and that's why you're raising the hand. That's why I just
Okay,
interrupted my.
sorry for interrupting.
Well, I
No
think
problem.
it's actually, I realize we're in kind of a test session. I think it's fine either way. If you see somebody in the audience who you think might have a question that pertains to what you're talking about right now, the same way as we would in a live, in-person situation, you can go ahead and call on them if you like. But yeah, if you want, wait till the Q&A, and then I'll call on people who have their hands raised.
Sure. Actually, I'm going to go back to this previous slide. I wanted to mention the tasks that are shown in blue boxes are the automated tasks, and the tasks that are shown in green boxes are the manual tasks where the item waits in a queue. Let's talk about decision steps. Now, the decision steps are shown in orange boxes here. The decision steps basically evaluate what to do in a workflow, whether you want to take a particular path, which path in the workflow you want to take. That's what is determined by the decision steps. For example, the workflow I'm showing on the right-hand side is a kind of an example of a loan application workflow. In the first step, and there is a condition in the loan application workflow. If state is not Pennsylvania and loan amount is less than 10,000, then auto approve. And if it is greater than 10,000 or state is Pennsylvania, then send it for manual review. In both the cases, the item will wait in the review loan supervisor queue for final review. Now, those conditions are typically implemented in a workflow using decision boxes. So there is a first decision box that checks the state code condition. If state code is Pennsylvania, the item is going to the review loan queue. But if it is not Pennsylvania, then depending upon the loan amount, if loan amount is greater than 10,000, it goes to the review loan queue. If it is less than or equal to 10,000, it goes to an automatic task of approving the loan. And then after that, the work item goes to the review loan supervisor queue. And from there it is end. Now, typically those conditions are coded inside the workflow configuration as part of the decision step branches. And I'm going to show you that in the workflow implementation of such a workflow with conditions. Now, problem with such coding decision step conditions in workflow is that those conditions quickly grow into complex conditions. The example that we took was very simple. If state is Pennsylvania or loan amount is greater than 10,000, send it to manual review. But in reality, those conditions are much more complex than that. And another challenge about coding the decision steps conditions in the workflow is that you have to store the document level attributes inside the workflow. So loan amount, for example, and state code, those are attributes of the document loan application. And now you have to store those two fields in workflow as well, along with its original system of record. Now we are storing same piece of information in two places, one in the loan application database, and we are also storing loan amount and state code inside the workflow database. Now you have same piece of information in two places, which can cause synchronization issues. If loan application database is updated with the loan amount or state, then you have to come back and update the workflow database as well. Further, not all document attributes could be stored in workflow. In reality, document level attributes could be complex. I mean, in this way, we took just one simple example of loan amount, but a loan application can have multiple applicants. And if there are conditions based on applicants' data, then you have to store all the applicants' information inside workflow for the workflow conditions to be evaluated. And that causes multiple issues. Some workflow applications do not allow storing that complex document level attributes inside workflow. Another challenge is change in conditions requires redeploying workflow configuration. That causes version management challenges. Another problem is some complex conditions that require use of decision tree or tables. Those metaphors are not available in workflow applications. So in summary, workflow systems or BPM, business process management systems, are suitable for managing workflow, but they are not suitable for managing complex routing business rules. So what's the solution? The solution is to introduce decision services in workflows. So in the diagrams on the right on the screen, I'm showing the first diagram on the left is the original workflow, which contains state code and loan amount conditions. But on the right hand side, the same workflow is implemented, but we have introduced a decision service called determine next step, as shown in the blue box. So the idea is when the workflow is launched, the first thing that will happen is an automated task of determining what should be the next step. And that service will be a decision service. That decision service will pull the loan application from the system of record, determine what should be the next step, and respond with a next step decision. And the workflow then using that decision routes the application, whether it should be reviewed or should it be approved, as shown in the diagram on the right hand side. So that eliminates the need to code complex business rules like state code and loan amount inside the workflow. Business rules are externalized to a decision service. It's much cleaner and simpler workflow, which is easy to understand. So when we introduce decision services in workflows, how does it happen? So why we want to include decision services? That's very simple answer, that we want to externalize decision making process, consistency of decisions. Imagine in workflow when similar type of conditions are occurring in multiple places in a workflow. So you have to recode those conditions in multiple places. That can cause inconsistency in the workflow decisions. So if you have externalized the decision services, the decisions are evaluated consistently in the same manner. And changes in business rules do not require redeploying workflow configuration. For example, in the loan application example we took earlier, if we wanted to, let's say, okay, if state code is Pennsylvania or New Jersey, then it should be manually reviewed. Now, if you're doing it through a decision service, all you have to do is update the rules in the decisions management system and introduce a new state, New Jersey there in the rules. And you don't have to then update the workflow, and the workflow will automatically start routing applications based on the updated rules. Now, how does it happen? Workflow, like as explained earlier, each workflow is associated with a document. That means there's some sort of an ID is persisted in the workflow for each workflow that we create. And that ID is the document ID, which is passed to a decision service wrapper, which pulls the data from the system of record using document services. Then it invokes the decision service for whatever routing decision you have to calculate. And that routing decision is returned to the workflow. I'm going to now jump to a demo, but if anybody has any questions before I jump to demo. Okay.
I'm not seeing any questions, but I actually have a question.
Sure.
I'm sure part of what inspired you to create this topic for today was that I had posted about how I am more on the process side rather than the decision side. But when I look at decision services and workflows, I agree with all your reasons why you want to invoke decision services from workflows rather than embedding the decision logic within the workflows themselves. The problem comes is that if you take a process model and you then show this to your business people, they lose, or what can you do so that they don't lose understanding of what's in those decision services? Like, how do you present both the process and the decision information at the same time to them so that they fully understand what they're looking at?
Yeah, that's a very good question. So typically what I do is, along with workflow, you also have rules report associated with it. So determine next step is kind of is a rules decision service that we invoke. So along with the workflow, you have to also have a documentation around the determine next step rules, or at least some sort of comment in the process workflows. You can, many workflow configurations allow you to put tags on the branches. So here where I say approve loan or review loan, you can say review loan based on loan amount and state, but you don't actually specify the exact values of which state and which loan amount. So put some sort of tags on the branches to make it a little bit more add more comments to it, so it's easy to understand.
Okay, good. I don't see any other questions right now, so I'd say go ahead, and then we can come back for questions at the end.
Sure. So for today's demo, I'm going to show you this loan application processing system that I've developed in our Rulesmatics in-house workflow management system. We'll be using Sparkling Logic Smarts for the decision service, and I will show you the rules that we use to determine how a given loan application should be routed. So first, I'm going to show you. This is our workflow management admin console, and I'm going to go to the loan application work region. So here I have created two different work classes, one for the loan application with conditions. So when you click on that, and that's the workflow associated with it is state code. And if I click on the branch, you can see the condition here. If state is equal to Pennsylvania, the other branch says state is not equal to Pennsylvania. This branch says loan amount greater than 10,000, and this branch says loan amount less than equal to 10,000. So that's a simple workflow with conditions. And I'm going to show you a similar workflow, but this time I'm going to show it with a decision service. So here, first step is a determine next step, which is linked to an external process or decision service called with the same name. And the routing application decision box has two branches. It uses a routing decision as returned by the determine next step. If it is review loan, then it goes to the review loan branch. And if it is equal to approve loan, it goes to the approve loan branch. And I'm going to now launch an application. And now I'm using, in a database, I created 5 sample loan objects. And first, one of them is with the loan amount of 5,000 in Pennsylvania, which should be manually reviewed because of the Pennsylvania condition. And see another one with New Jersey, which should be automatically approved because it is not Pennsylvania. So I'm going to actually launch a work object, and this I'm going to use the document ID of, what's that, 5, which is the New Jersey, and I'm going to say submit, and I'm going to say New Jersey loan application. And when you click on it, since it is not a Pennsylvania application, if I go into the work objects flow to see how it flowed through the workflow, it said it went to determine this next step service, and it went to the route application, and it was automatically approved because it is a New Jersey loan application, and right now it is waiting in review loan supervisor. Now, if I want to change our rules that all New Jersey applications should also be manually reviewed, I will come to my decision management services platform, which is Smarts I'm using here. Here there are 3 rules. First rule is to approve all loans by default. And if the state is Pennsylvania, then review. If loan amount is greater than 10,000, review. I'm going to add New Jersey here to the review loan condition. And now I've added that. I'm going to change, and I'm going to deploy this changes. And if I go back to my workflow application, and I'm going to launch another work object for the same document, which is document number 5. And I'm going to say New Jersey loan application. And since the rules have been updated to route New Jersey applications to manual review, if I go into see the diagram, I will see that the item actually now goes to review loan application queue. So that way, changing in rules automatically changes the way the workflow behaves. That's all I wanted to show today. Anybody, any questions? I see.
Okay,
Jedinas.
we have one question that just came up in the Slack channel from Alessandro, and he said possibly he didn't understand all the details of the approach you're proposing, but it seems very similar to using business rule tasks in BPMN linked to DMN decision services. And what are the differences between your approach and the BPM platforms that implement BPMN and DMN automation?
Yeah, the approach is same actually. There's no difference. It's just the way of implementation is different. But the idea is to not code any decision conditions inside the workflow and use a service instead. And both the approaches, like the one I explained and the one he's talking about, they follow the same approach.
Okay. We also have a question on Zoom. I'm going to unmute Gediminas if you want to ask your question.
Yes, many thanks. So my question is following. So in practice, origination process is much more complicated than the one has been presented, whereas a sub-process within it represent the decision process. So my general question is on, do we differentiate between the end-to-end business process and recognize that there is a decision process? And this way, the workflow which has been presented is a subject for a decision process orchestration, which basically further means that decision process orchestration complements the DMN because
Yeah, basically, like I'm going to show you the smarts. And they also on all decision management platforms, there is a way of linking the decisions within a decision service. So if I understood your question, let me actually show you where is the decision flow. Yeah. So right now, this is a very simple one-step decision step. So what the the flow as provided by decision management platform should be used to string different rule sets or different decisions, as long as you don't have there's no workflow related item in between. All decisions that are related, that do not require any manual or automated steps in between, should be done within the decision management platform. But if there is some task related things that you need to do in between two different decisions, that's where the workflow will come into picture. Did I answer your question?
yes, to some extent. I believe this question also relevant to Sally. She is a process person, and at least from my perspective, there is no good answer still in the industry differentiating the decision process from a business process. And demand on itself, it does not solve the problem on how to organize the decision making, which spans across multiple steps within the process, and trying to combine everything within the decision model could complicate. So, in other words, to say, business subject matter experts combine both approaches and not sticking to the one.
Yeah, but let's assume the situation here, determine next step is one decision, and approve loan is actually not a decision related task. It is more like updating the system of records with the loan approval status. It is not a decision making task, right? Now, if there was another task in between that was decision related, then I would connect both the decisions inside the flow provided by the decision management platform rather than in the workflow itself. Does that make sense? Like if there are two decisions that are dependent on second decision is dependent on the first decision, and there is no intermediate external services needed, then those two decisions should be stringed inside decision management platform.
completely agree with your observation. My point was here more related that, for example, workflow engine, which you are showing, is it a true BPM platform, or it is just pure for the matter to orchestrate the decision making at the time, for example, when you, even for this loan origination, you need to make a credit decision, and in between, you have to do a data enrichment for the cost saving purposes.
Yeah, so this particular framework that you're seeing on the screen is we developed for simple workflow processes, which you can use to make calls to decision services or non-decision services, as well as it provides a mechanism for persisting long running processes in where queues are involved, where where you had the access to queues should be available based on the user roles. So what you're seeing on the screen is the front end of it. There is an API library also provided by it, which you can use to pull. For example, if I go here back in my region, I see that this particular decision service, this work class has 10 active and 5 objects in exception state. So a total of 15 work objects in the system. And I'm clicking on it. These are all work objects, all these, but the same information can also be pulled using an API that we have exposed, which people usually don't use admin console to manage their to launch work objects. There are applications like injectors that you will create to launch objects. Then there will be monitors that you will create to show the depth of different queues. This is more like an admin console where administrator can use to see high level picture of how many work objects to configure the workflows, not necessarily to launch the workflows. I'm showing this, there is a launch option I added just so you can test various workflows. But typically there will be a separate business application that will be launching workflows.
Thank you.
Okay, good. Jacob, you have your hand up. Do you want to ask a question?
Yes. I not so concerned on business process management. It's a very solid area, but we frequently, from a decision management perspective, we frequently use BPM engine as an orchestration of decision services and sub-decision services. And from this perspective, we have so many beautiful tools, and yours one of them, and I really like your interface and this dynamic routing features, but it's all inside one tool. And you can see, you probably seen a lot of other vendors, BPM vendors who do the same. But I wonder, in the world today, when we move all decision services to microservices available from different clouds like AWS, these clouds themselves provide very competitive products such as AWS Event Bridge, just recently released by AWS. And this is a so powerful tool with their own rules, state machines, something what we usually don't see in traditional BPM engines. And would you consider this as a probably more interesting migration direction?
One of the reasons, like I mentioned earlier, the frameworks and utilities, our philosophy is to keep it simple and small. And we're working with various clients. Always, there were a concern about the size of the framework, or requiring new servers, requires training, and it takes there was a ramp up time before they could write their first business application that uses business processes. So we provided this framework. The Blue Cross Blue Shield of New Jersey, they had a 2-year timeline to develop their applications that required workflows, and it required like millions of dollars for new infrastructure. And when we provided this framework, and they were able to write their first implementation within 6 weeks of using this. And this is like a micro kind of a framework which combines decision services and workflow capabilities. So something they can, put into production very quickly. And not to mention, it didn't require any new servers. They were able to use their existing servers, their existing database schemas, and no new memory requirements. The workflow engine itself, the compiled code is 150 kilobytes. It's not even in megabytes. So it's such small, workflow engine we have. So this was to like keep it simple and small philosophy. And it doesn't compete with the other high-end BPM products that have a lot of other features and all. This provides only the features that you need, and that's it.
Okay, I think we have time for one last question. We have one here on Zoom from Gerardo Lisboa. Oh, sorry. I think we both clicked your unmute at the same time. Go ahead.
Hi. I think your presentation well, it's something I've discussed with some customers about, well, this balance between something that's more reasonably managed and in terms of programming and development, and what is visible for the business user. But I was wondering, that what I was writing about, that maybe, but I don't think there's any product in the market that does this. We should be able to show a decision model within a process model in the same way we use in some processes, where we can collapse and expand and collapse a process, and then have a visual representation of it, which is more business oriented, if you'd like. But I don't think that's very that exists right now. It could be easier to manage and reduce this back and forth between the two approaches that you had.
Okay, see, this product is, or framework is not designed to replace decision management platforms, decision flow capabilities. That is a feature of the appropriate decision management platform. For example, in Smarts, they have a very nice decision flow, even though I'm not using it here. I can give you an example there. There are other, I mean, all decision management platforms have complex decision flow capabilities. And this workflow tool that I showed does not replace that functionality. That part should stay in the decision management platform. So this workflow tool is purely to manage workflow processes and business processes, along with capability to invoke external services and like decision services.
Okay, well, I think that's all the time we have. We're at about the half-hour mark. This session is being recorded, and it will be posted on YouTube when we have it available. I'd like to thank you all for coming to this last of our pre-conference sessions, and we will see you all on Monday for the main event.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you.